Good morning, good evening, good night, NBN Entrepreneurship and Leadership.
Personally, I'm fascinated by the story.
Trust is an underrated weapon in the business landscape.
I'm a really strong believer in learning by doing.
What's the definition of success?
You're trying to come up with an answer to the question. But go ahead, Richard.
You could be right, but you're wrong. Good morning, good evening, good night, whatever time of the day it is. Entrepreneurship and Leadership New Books Network podcast listeners. Today we've got Veronique Ozkaya, if I pronounce your name correctly, Veronique.
Pretty good. Veronique Ozkaya. There's a little umlaut on the...
That's who we've got, who's the CEO of Argos Multilingual. And Veronique, good afternoon. How would you introduce yourself if not the way I did it?
Well, I think you did very well. I'm Veronique Ozkaya. I work in the localization industry, and I'm currently CEO at Argos Multilingual, one of the leading agencies in the field of localization.
Exactly. And
for those that don't know what localization is,
go.
It's basically, we're translating, we actually, so yeah, Veronique and I work in the same company, but we're translating, she's the boss, but we do translate content into multiple, we basically help companies export their products and services into all the countries of the world.
Yes, and just to declare an interest, and when Kimon stopped being the CEO of this company was when you took over. So you've got the former CEO and the current CEO on the call, and I will be talking mainly about you, Veronique, and obviously the company will come into it. And did you? And so if you go back a bit in your life, could you describe your childhood and your upbringing? Because you're quite multi-ethnic. Did you grow up in one country or around? I always struggle to remember myself, so you can remind us.
Sometimes I struggle to remember myself. So I'm a French national. My father is French and my mother is half Belgian, half Dutch. And they met in Belgium somewhere, probably in a nightclub, and they ended up getting married. And my mom moved to France. My mother was a qualified midwife. But at the time, you didn't have a diploma conversion from one country to another. So she ended up working in my father's business. And my dad's side of the family, they've always been very much entrepreneurs. So they had a business of horticulture, so plants and flowers and all of that, and supplying to whatever businesses and also general public. And that was kind of a family business that was handed in.
So this is like a florist, like what we would
but at big scale, so thousands and thousands of plants and flowers and all,
like with a big farm behind it. And then,
exactly, and the glass houses and all of that stuff, right? And so as a kid, I was very much exposed to this entrepreneurship because they had their own business, but it also kind of showed me the side that is not so glamorous, which is the long hours, working weekends, not taking vacation when everybody else was taking vacation because summer was their high season, all of that stuff. And I thought, wow, it's hard work. Plus I worked with them. So in the summers, my family's philosophy say, well, you're going to, learn quite early what it takes to make money, literally. So for my summer holiday, I had one month I had to work and 1 month I could, basically be on holidays.
It's good parenting.
And my dad used to kind of, put me in a glass house and show me what to do, right? And he would show me for 10 minutes and then I would be by myself for the rest of the day to kind of, do the work. So I know how to prune all sorts of plants.
Yeah, but when did they put you in front of the clients?
They did put me in front of the They put me in front of the clients when I was about 15. So we had also there was the business was like kind of, you could call it cash and carry. The big thing, right. The trucks would come and take, thousands of plants and go to Paris, but they also had like the shop. And I was in the shop from about 15, right? And I kind of like that.
But one of the lessons you learned was, quite often people who've gone into business, they go into business and they had nothing in their background. Sometimes they say, well, my mother or my father was a great role model. But in one way, the lesson you learned was maybe entrepreneurship wasn't for you as the first choice. Is that correct?
It's correct because, to be, with my childhood perspective, I kind of envied the kids of the doctors or the lawyers down the street who had it a little bit easier. In retrospective, I think what my dad did was smart, because he kind of taught me lesson of life very early. And, it was enjoyable, but I knew that, maybe it's not for me. So it kind of gave me a different direction.
Did you like it when you were in the shop? I'm just curious, like that part.
I did. And people were always like, I find that I also like dealing with the annoying customers and trying to solve things. So I like the diversity. And that was kind of a key because it was never the same. And, people may, I don't know, they would have a wedding, they would have this, they would have that. So you do different things. But then it made me think, I didn't like stuff that was too repetitive. And I knew I didn't want to stay in my hometown. It was a small town, northern France.
Right.
And so I said, I need to study something that's going to get me out of here.
It's so often the case that the major impetuses to do things in your life is like, I don't want to carry on doing what I'm doing. I need a change. And, it's not always that, but it's so often the case, isn't it?
Exactly. And everybody was studying kind of, I don't know, 50 miles away from home. And I said, no, I'm going far. So I went about 500 miles or so. I went to the south of France, actually, to study. And I studied international politics. Actually, I wanted to be a diplomat because I thought I'll travel. I definitely won't be in my hometown. Won't be boring.
So you're passionate then of like cultures and travel and languages. Like what? Like why? Why do you think that was?
Because when I started studying English in school, I kind of found it fun to be able to communicate in another language. I got, now I'm going to show off a bit, got first prize in English, when I was like, I don't know, 12, 13. And I won a prize on a trip to the UK.
No way.
And I went to Cambridge. Right?
Very good city. Very good city.
Right?
That's where Richard graduated. Just to be, let's
I kind of
full
thought there was
disclosure.
a link there. And it kind of also opened my eyes. So this time, this kind of teenage time was kind of interesting, right? Because I went, and this is fun here, England, and the people are different. And
were your parents, so you said they were working all the time. They didn't have that time for vacation. So you didn't really get the internet, like they weren't, they were somewhat international being, but it's cross-border, northern France, Belgium, and Holland.
And my grandmother, she had an apartment in Spain. So she would take me so I spent actually I didn't spend my summer vacation with my parents. It was either with an aunt, with my grandma, with cousins or whatever.
So are you an only child? Are you an only child?
No, I have a younger sister.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And initially she was going to stay in the business, and then she took a different path. But initially she was going to stay in the business.
And were you did that disappoint your parents? Were they quite happy for you to go off and do your own thing, or did you feel a little bit of pressure? It's a pity. Who's going to take over from us? That kind of stuff.
Never had that pressure. They sold the business, and I have to say that from my mom's side, my mom was like, yeah, do what, she kind of felt like I was always like, like quite good in school, whatever. Like I was quite decent. She saw a lot of potential there academically, and she actually encouraged me. My dad was a bit more like, oh no, stay close. She was like, no, spread your wings and off you go.
Nice. Mom. And so then you ended up choosing diplomacy. Just in your head, you were thinking, this is my ticket to travel around.
Exactly.
And what is diplomacy? I can't even imagine. What does diplomacy study look like? What is that?
So I learned everything there is to know about, history, like all the, the wars, the alliances, the all of the treaties, all of the, and from, starting quite back in history to recent times. And that was quite interesting. And then I had 1 year in Ireland on Erasmus. And what was really cool there is that we were applying things to current affairs and analysis of, what was going on, and, analyzing, for example, the Israelo-Palestinian conflict and stuff. And I thought, okay, that's kind of fun. And I got into the French embassy. So that was my first job. I got in as like assistant to the consul. Mm-hmm. And it was horrible. It was just horrendous.
Well, for somebody like who knows you, like I know you, this dynamic, fast-moving, I can't imagine a worse environment for you than the. Actually, when you think back on it, the diplomatic you were so obviously look back and said, no way, like that.
At the time, we're talking the 90s. It was still extremely conservative. You needed the duster to just, remove the cobwebs. Very rigid. And I understood, hold on a second, how do I go from here? And basically I was told, well, you need to do about 10 to 15 years in really tough countries to kind of earn your stripes. So 3 years in Angola, at the time that was not the place to be, 3 years in Lebanon. And I was like, shoot, that's not what there was a gap between my...
And Veronique, how many hours or days or weeks did it take you to realize that this was a bad choice? Was it immediate, or was it over a period of days or months?
A month.
A month.
Exactly. So what did you do? So then what?
So then, and I looked for advice. When I look back at my career, I've always thought that ask people. If you don't know, ask. I wish I had asked a bit more about this diplomatic course before. But when I was in the embassy, I kind of made friends with a couple of the ladies working there, and they kind of told me things for what they were, and that kind of helped also open my eyes, right? And I thought, okay, I left after a few months without a job. I said, I'll figure it out. And, you kind of pay rent, right? So I started teaching French in a business school, no qualifications. It was really MacGyver at the time, I have to say.
Nice.
But that was kind of fun. And I remember to look older than my students because they were the same age as me. I used to wear glasses even though I didn't need them. I tried to kind of say, okay, I need to, pay the rent. And then I saw an ad for a job as a translator, English into French. And I said, okay, why not? Again, I didn't have that background. And I did the test, and it was about, I never forgot, that was about hardware. I had never touched a computer at the time. So I had a friend, and I asked again, I said, hey, I need to learn about computers over the weekend. And he just said, oh my God. And he just took me into his office, and he opened an old computer and showed me, and I translated this test. And then when I got to the office there and I gave it, they called me 2 days later. They were really in need of staff, I think, but they hired me. And they said, okay, the test is impeccable, but you don't understand the topic.
Which was true.
It was totally true. And I never tried to, fob it or anything. I said, you know what, I do nothing about computers. And I got super lucky because the lady who was hiring me, she's still my friend today. She said, I'm going to help you. And that was like this, let's say, informal mentor. That really what kind of got my foot in. And she went to work every day 2 hours before the normal start time to teach me the ropes for 3 months.
To teach you translation.
Yeah. And editing and all the techniques, and kind of also teach me about IT, because at the time the company was doing a lot of technology translation. It was the model still where you had in-house translators.
Okay.
And then after 3 months, I got fired.
Okay, let's take that firing moment to just take a break.
Sure.
Just for people who are listening, they may not appreciate what Argos Multilingual is. Like, everyone imagines that a translation company might be a few restaurant menus or stuff like that. Could you just give a little sense of the scale of Argos now? Because Veronique's running one of the larger businesses in the world that do this, and so I think, although just as we listen to this story, I want people to appreciate where you've got to from where you were. So just jump to where you are now, and then we'll jump back.
Right. And so what we do at Argos is that, as Kimon was explaining, we help companies go global. Companies produce content. The content might be a piece of software. It might be a user's manual for that product or that software. It might be marketing communication, right? Your marketing communication can be a brochure about a product, but it can be an advertisement. It can be all sorts of things, right? It's website. So when you think about every single piece of content that you read or you listen to, if you want somebody in another country who doesn't speak English to have access to this, you need to translate, adapt that content. And that's what we do. And we work mostly in sectors like life science, so medical sector, manufacturing and technology. So to give you an example, we take the customer does heart rhythm management, so the pacemakers that people will have it. Well, you want the doctor who's going to place your pacemaker, if he's in Slovenia, to have all of these instructions in Slovenian and not make a mistake when he or she places that pacemaker. We translate that content. So it means the translator, it's not, Joe Blogs off the street who can do that. The translators have a specific degree in translation and a level of experience that enables them to provide that work. We manage this work. So if, Richard, you are, a product manager in a big pharma company, and you say, okay, I have this drug and it's going to be released in 50 countries, we manage that process of making sure everything gets translated, maybe formatted, everything, so that when you get your product back in the 50 languages, it's ready to be actually shipped in the different countries.
Okay, so that just gives a bit of context. So it's not just the odd, like the guy, because even if you wander down most streets in Krakow in Poland where I and Kimon live, you see little signs that saying translation in Polish, and you can walk in with your will or some document, and you hand it over, and it's not that at all, really, is it?
No, and we work very much in the enterprise business, so it's really corporations who have formal needs that tend to be recurrent as well. One of the big trends we've seen in the business, I call that streaming content. So you've got non-stop content. And if you look at, your daily life, content is produced in such an exponential way today. We actually only address part of the market. We address the corporate side of the market.
With just a funny anecdote, we do have an office. We have a big office here in Krakow, and people have come. I mean, over the years of the company, it happened many times that people came off the street and we're so not built for that. We don't even know how to handle that. I remember at the beginning, they didn't know what to do. And finally we made a decision, like, you just have to tell them that our minimum fee is, because that just would scare, because the minimum fee was crazy, more than and then they would get mad at us.
Actually,
they would yell at us for, how could you charge that much?
That's actually, we like to draw out general business lessons that this is applicable across all industries. The nicest way to say we don't want to do business with someone is to have a very high minimum
but they would
fee,
still get
which
mad,
is
Richard.
above.
They'd get pissed. It's what? You're stealing. This is ripping people off. How can you?
It's $50,000 for one day.
No, what I do rather than say no is I refer people and say, yeah, we would be quite expensive, whatever. Here, why don't I give you the contact of the person who can do it directly for you, right?
Right, but
and
Veronique,
I know
this
that,
was like
right.
Yola in the reception. she had to deal with this person off the street. So,
and
anyway.
If I needed to do my birth certificate translation, I wouldn't go to Argos. I know I would go to a small agency. That again, it's back to specialization.
Yeah, it is.
Right. So.
Okay, but the company you were working for back then, you got fired. They needed in-house translators, right? So they would.
First of all, Veronique, that has to be the only time in your life you've been fired.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, I just came in.
What did you do wrong?
and you know what? I don't think 20 people got fired that day. All the in-house translators. There was an M&A happening. We were just so young. We had no clue what was going on. So the company we were working for got bought by a Dutch company. And the Dutch CEO manager came to Dublin. And that day we didn't have a clue what was happening. It was a Friday. He fired 20 people on the spot. And he said, but it was in September. He said, but we want you to work till December because we had this big project for a company doing software for architect, right? So it was a massive project. He said, but we want all of the linguists to stay. We will pay you till December so you finish the project. And this was a moment where, we're talking about lessons. I was very bold that day because my mentor, the one who helped me train up, she said, why are you being upset about? Think, what can you do? And she literally gave me this mental slap and said, don't wallow in self-pity, do something about it. And I took the 20 linguists, we went for a drink. And I said, do we need to take it lying down? Or maybe we go on Monday morning, we all resign on the spot. And we say, if you want us to finish the project, you need to rehire us as freelance. And here's the rate. Thank you very much.
Nice. Leverage.
Entrepreneurial moment. Entrepreneurial moment.
I was thinking when you were telling the story, that opportunity immediately popped into my head. I had no idea that you had done that, but I'm like, really? You just like this?
You do get that slap because, you're young, you just started a job. It's not very nice to be fired. But then we thought, yes, leverage, and they need us, right? The leverage, they need us to finish this project. And what was interesting is that after we finished this project, a number of people really were resentful to the company for being fired in the first place, and they moved on. I didn't have that. I actually stayed in that company, and I made a career. It became Lionbridge. So that was a kind of a wise move.
One of the biggest companies in the world for those.
So you and a big group of people, you were invoicing the people you formerly worked for as employees just as freelancers
Yes.
for 3 months, and that
double what we were making.
double.
So how, Veronique, did you get from, so how did you, so you went, you said you stayed in the company. So how did you get back in? And then how did you ultimately get outside? Because just for people to know, the CEO of Argos doesn't do translations herself.
Yes.
And I mean, and in total, I did translation / editing for 6 months in total in my career.
Right.
So when I got back in, the model had changed. So in our industry, the model in the, let's say 80s, 90s were still in-house translators. And then it shifted to outsourcing, meaning that you would use translators in country and you would manage this. So the translation agencies, the larger ones like Lionbridge at the time, like Argos today, it's really project management that you do. You organize, you orchestrate the whole process, right? And so I actually got back in as a kind of a language lead. I was basically responsible for all of the French language across all of the projects and products, right? So that was my first in. And then after a few months, there was an opening in project management. And I thought, okay, I've acquired those skills of managing across the board, a number of people, a number of projects. I want to try that. So I did project management. And I mean, I have to say, I was lucky in a sense to always have great managers who recognize the work. So I didn't really kind of ask for it. And then I kind of graduated to a production management.
How long were you in the project? How long did you do project management?
I did about 5, I'd say 6, 7 years in total. So
wow, good.
Yeah.
So you really have that foundation, because that's really the business, is the core of what we do is really project management. People think of us as translation companies, but we really are managing these complicated projects.
And just again, we are going to work through your life, but I'd like to pick out particular points that sometimes it's a real advantage for the boss, the leader, to just have a sense of distance and not really understand, but like look independently at what the people working for them, like you can be the boss of Coke and not know how to make Coca-Cola or whatever. On the other hand, sometimes it's a real advantage to understand the detail of the different processes involved. And what would you say the advantage for you now is, having done these different roles? How does that help you be the boss now?
I mean, maybe kind of coming back on the philosophy, I like to be able to dive down and back up. And I think for me, it's an advantage. The CEO of Delta once said something that really struck, and stayed with me. He said, I sometimes board a plane to see what's the experience as a passenger. I go on the tarmac and see how the engineers work. I sit in the cockpit with the pilots. I go at the desk with the people in the desk people in the airport. And I like that because it's kind of getting that experience. It doesn't mean you understand, what you need to do as an engineer, but you kind of appreciate what it takes. And what it gave me is that I have the greatest respect and appreciation for how hard it is to be a project manager, to be a linguist, I did DTP, I did engineering, I did testing. As I say, it was a little bit MacGyver, because we were in this stage where, you rolled up your sleeves and you got whatever done to get the project out the door, right? And it was a little chaotic and a feeling of startup, but because you got your fingers in a lot of pies, you understood. And I also understand how it evolves with technology and so on. But when I talk to a project manager, I know, I'm not saying I could do it today, that's not the point, but I understand that the business challenges they have to deal with in terms of delivering on time, in terms of customer service, etc. So I find it helpful. And what I typically do, and Kimon does that too, is that I have one-to-ones with different individuals across the company. And I ask them questions, because if I don't do that, then I think I stay too remote from what's going on. So it's this balance in understanding what's happening on the ground with our customers, with our staff, and also being able to take this, elevate it, and kind of think through what to do with this, because it actually feeds into our not just our strategy, but how we operate and how we develop the company.
Correct.
Yeah, I'd add to that, Richard. I'd add one more thing, because I think another thing you use it for, Veronique, that you didn't mention, that I think you use it for all the time, is clients. Is you understand the clients. Once you're in that production space, if you just are brought in as a salesperson, to talk to the client about the client's problems, you really don't understand the client's problems as well as somebody who's actually on the production side. And so being able to create, and that now you as a CEO, as somebody who creates vision and creates the future of the company, I know that this is a valuable tool for you it helps you understand clients, which then helps you create services and ways in marketing and positioning going forward. So I think that's also huge, like the client side.
So certainly, and there's yet another aspect of this, which I think, and I know you're very, very modest, but I think you can be a leader without having done the job. But it really helps get the respect of the people in the organization if you know that you, at some stage in your past, you sat in their shoes. It's possible to manage people without that, but if you've done what they do now, they will warm to you more because they feel more understood, and part of leading people is understanding them, isn't it?
Absolutely. And if I hadn't had this experience, I know that probably my first couple of months on the job, if I came from outside the industry, would have been to sit on the production floor and like watch and ask questions and try to understand.
I'm having yet another thought here, which is to do with process efficiency as well. That sometimes when I'm mentoring people, I ask them to, if I know that they're going to be having to manage other people doing a particular task, I say, do it yourself for an hour and just time yourself so you can do that 40 times in an hour. Because if then they say it takes me, I can do 2 per hour. And if sometimes the differences are not marginal, they're enormous. And if you say, that's ridiculous, you can buy a plane ticket in 30 seconds because I've done it. Someone says they need to go and buy a plane ticket and they need an hour. So do you find that you're at the level where you're looking for operational efficiencies, or do you delegate that to other people in the organization?
I pick up on some of those, and then of course I trust. We have brilliant people in the company, and they have this mentality. Just to give you an example, I had a conversation not so long ago with one of our staff, and he was mentioning to me something very, it was a little bit of a detail, right, on a process, but he was explaining to me how instead of spending 15 minutes, he could have it down to 5. And then what I asked him is, how do you scale that? How do you apply this? How much can you apply it to? And then actually you take that and you say, hold on a second, that's in one part of the process. How do we extend that? So definitely I pick on some things and I ask, are we already doing that? And sometimes it's, yes, we already are. And sometimes, I don't know, actually, we haven't picked up on that. Why? Because, work is ongoing. And I think that to my level, I can contribute a little bit in this standing back and looking. And other people are doing this in the organization, thankfully. But this is kind of fun part for me also of the job, to be able to really see what's under the hood or the bonnet.
I'd like to, I didn't ask, I forgot. There was a question I wanted to ask actually when we flew through your early years. And this is something I don't know about you, so I'm kind of actually genuinely curious about it as well. Is that like, did you play sports, or would you consider yourself a competitive person, and how did it manifest itself?
You won the prize. I noticed you smiled when you said you got the scholarship, or you won the prize to go to the UK. So I noticed there's a little flash of competitive.
I am terribly. I am such a bad loser. I am terribly competitive. On a trip, it was not a honeymoon trip, but a couple of years into marriage, we went on a holiday with my husband. We had taken up tennis, right? And I did tennis when I was younger. My husband was very annoying because he was extremely talented at it from the get-go. Never have touched a racket before.
Oh, so you both okay.
And then we went to this whatever on vacation, and we're on the tennis court, and he was just like playing like I was like much stronger, physically than I was. Yeah. And I got so annoyed, I just threw the racket, and you know what he did? Smart man. He picked up the racket, said, "Let's go have a cocktail." So yes, I did sports, and I'm a sore loser.
And do you let your kids win?
Yes, I'm kind of. I don't know. Actually,
I don't.
When they were very small, I would let them win, and they picked up on like, did you let me win? They didn't like it, and now no.
So now, do you let them win?
No. I mean, come on. Like once they passed probably age 7, that was over.
So in the board game, whatever you play, Monopoly, or any board games, those.
If you play, you're gonna play serious. We play poker, we play tarot cards. Like we're serious.
All right, sorry, Richard. Let's go back. It's a little. I digressed the thing. So
I mean, in the current context, as well as leading Argos, you invested a significant amount of money, and we're business partners. You're shareholders now, and so did you always have that as a goal to be like to be co-own? And because it's one thing to work for other people and be successful, it's another thing to be a co-owner. And I'm just wondering whether you had in mind that was something that you might do or you really wanted to do, like just in terms of how you felt about that role.
And maybe you can just as you get to that, because I don't remember either your situations in the previous, were there equity deals and stuff like that? Maybe you had something before. I don't remember exactly.
Right. So if I kind of step back, to that time when I finished in production, because I think that's maybe something interesting, the sales part. So the reason I moved from production into sales was because I was getting frustrated with salespeople, because I felt they were not doing their homework. And I had a few episodes where we would go to a meeting and I would have prepped them and given them insights, and they would put their foot in it at the customer meeting on really basic things that they should have known. And I felt they're very distant, but they're the ones kind of making the commission and making the deals, but they're not making that effort to really help the customer. So this was kind of this change moment in my mind. I said, well, maybe I can do it. I know what we're selling, and I have the customer at heart. I want to do good for them. So that's how I transitioned. But the interesting thing, in terms of leadership, I should have asked for the job, and I didn't. I actually got headhunted by a company.
You're about 30 years old now, I guess.
I was late 20, yeah, just about 30, right? Exactly. And I got this job in a startup to be sales associate now, and I got a call from the CEO of Lionbridge, and I was like, why is he calling me? And he said, I heard you resigned, and we were quite a big company at the time. We had a couple thousand employees, so I was like, wow, I'm getting the call. And he said, why didn't you tell me that you wanted to do sales? I'm like, I was going to pick up the phone. Hey, Rory, how are you doing? I have this, and so I kind of, I thought, all right, whatever. And he said, we will create a job for you. I want you to stay.
Yeah, but let's give Rory some props here, because on the one hand, you say that the company maybe missed the opportunity on some level to offer it, but they realized they were going to lose a talent, and they went back and they got it. And that's ultimately the end result. Because that's
exactly,
for me in business, it's actually, who cares how you got there? You got there. You got her.
There.
You didn't lose there. You didn't lose her. You got her, basically. No. So.
And then I was like, a year of be careful what you wish for. You might just get it, because it was hell. I didn't know what to do. And that's where I felt really having somebody to help me, mentor, tell me what to do would have been great. I had to figure it out. Okay. Anyway, it worked. Long story short, I became super successful in sales. I was like #1 salesperson at the whole of Lionbridge, because of all my friends in the organization. Because the fact that I had built this network, people trusted me.
And this was the biggest company, right, Veronique? I mean, you were the most successful salesperson of the most successful translation localization company in the world. So that's just
my first year, I brought like just shy of $500,000 of business, and they told me I failed because my quota was 2 million. It's like, oh man. And again, you were talking about character and resilience. I said, I don't like failing. That's a bit like this.
Not hitting your target.
Not hitting the target. I'm not pleased with that. So I just stuck at it. But anyway, and so I got to that, and I really liked it. And then I took more responsibility. Back to your question on ownership. At the time, Lionbridge became public, and I kind of liked this feeling of, I was a shareholder, and and your bonus or whatever was a mix of cash and share options and all that stuff, and that that was always at the back of my mind. I thought that was interesting, and I always had the passion.
Did that turn out to be very lucrative for you? That those
was quite good.
Yeah.
I have to say that my regret was, again, overachiever, not to have been more senior earlier, because I would have had a bigger
thing. Okay.
Exactly. Because I saw also some of the, senior colleagues, did super well. Yet I think it was a very, very smart way, they were public soon, but it was a very smart way of keeping the talent and of making you feel like you're part of that story. The two companies I went to after, that was not the case. And for me, it was a little bit of a problem because I was getting also to a level of maturity and influence on the business where I thought, man, I just didn't want the cash and recognition. Cash was very good. But I felt that maybe you have a slightly different behavior. Your engagement is maybe a little bit stronger. So that. And then my before Argos, so I was CEO of a company. We sold a board-owned company. It was a privately held company. They sold to a private equity, and that was really, really insightful because then I really kind of saw the whole mechanics of that, of how the goals were set, how the strategy was set. Not necessarily that I agreed with all of it, but it was super interesting to actually understand the whole mechanics. And in that organization, as a staff member, you could get some equity, right? So you could buy some equity, but there was a cap on it, right? So it was like, no, you cannot own too much of the company. But definitely, also, I think it gives you. I could see the drive of, like in that previous company, I also saw the drive of the ones who were, equity owners.
And in a sense, I think there is a way of looking at a career as being an entrepreneurial process. You're a person who can offer a set of services and value to the employer, and you're looking for where you can have the most impact. And it's very important, the company, choosing which companies you work for. That many people listening, that the average age of someone starting a business is in the Harvard Business Review, it's 43 years old. It's people who've done something and they've got a skill set, they're aware of some opportunity, and was Lionbridge a good company? Did you feel like it was a growing market? You had a senior position, so it was a good opportunity to represent them as a salesperson for a period of your life, right?
It was a company that had the feel of like anything can be done. I have to say that it was my corporate upbringing, the American style. So my mindset was always, yes, we can. We'll figure it out. And I remember I had this fantastic operations manager in Dublin. And, when I was like a quota carrying salesperson, I would come to her, and I never wanted to sell something where we couldn't make money because I had been in production. I knew what it meant, right? And she used to always say to me, Vero, sell it, we'll figure it out, because the trust was there. And that to me was like a big lesson of like, build trust in the organization and people will go to the moon and back for you, and vice versa. And it was definitely a feeling of kind of startup. We were growing. There was very low attrition also in the company, and serious skills. What kind of was a change moment was a big M&A, and that was a lesson for me in M&A. Culture. Do not overlook don't just look at the spreadsheet and the cash and the money and the shares, because if you just don't look at that cultural and fit aspect, you're going to go in the wall. And I've seen this so many times. Lionbridge, I remember the CEO once on stage talked about the successes and the failures, and in his failure part, a big chunk was about a number of acquisitions where all the staff was gone by the time he spoke and all the customers were gone, right? So that for me, and it completely changed, that M&A completely changed the culture. To me, it gave me a very clear, not even a sense for me, it was verbalized that to go further in the organization would take 5 years. And I said, heck with that. I'm not going to wait 5 years to have another opportunity. So then I went to a company where they gave me the opportunity. And they said, and there you were talking about skills. They saw the transferable skills as being able to scale a business, right? They were in a stage where they said, okay, we've gone to a certain level of success. How do we go to the next chapter? We don't have the people in-house who know how to do that. So that's basically what, the skills that I kind of, that they bought from.
And it doesn't matter, no matter how successful or how big a company is, there are always challenges and opportunities, right? You can be number one, and then staying number one is hard. You can be a mid-tier company, and staying there is hard. And in terms, the translation industry is quite, there are quite a lot of women in senior positions. There are quite a lot of women around in translation generally. Is it true in senior management, or was it true in Lionbridge, or was it a bit unusual for someone to be as senior as you, who's female?
Lionbridge, before that acquisition, in my opinion, was an example of inclusion. And that, again, came from the top. It came from the CEO at the time. The COO was a woman. The legal counsel was a woman. I was, VPs in. I was VP in sales. We had quite a lot of women in high positions. And he used to have, maybe it was an unconscious bias, I don't know, but he kind of felt, oh no, the women in this organization, they get so much done. That he really saw the talent. When the M&A happened, it was the opposite. It was extremely conservative. It was a really, as I say, the culture meant that you saw all the doors closing in front of you. Unfortunately, because part of it because you were a woman.
This is touching. You're touching now, and they're like super interesting. I want to ask you how you, because as a man in the localization industry, I've never thought about this. I mean, I've been aware. I've been aware that it's been. I am fully aware that it's a mostly woman-run, mostly women. There are more women, I believe, than men working in. And in
Argos, we have 60. If I'm not mistaken, about 63% of our staff is women.
And it, like, I don't know, I guess it's just the way I never ever thought in terms of men and women. I never thought in terms of, I just never thought.
Neither did I until that day.
I just like the best person, whoever the best person is. Yeah. And we always had lots of women in senior positions, but just throughout your career, because let's just take it all the way back. I mean, throughout your career, because I think this is just interesting. Like, did you feel much or any discrimination or any difficulty in, breaking through? Because you were the CEO once also, by the way. I mean, of,
explanation. Absolutely. I up until that big M&A at Lionbridge, no, I didn't. Maybe it's also because I was unaware. My antennas might not have been really tuned into this, right? I was working and getting promoted. Life was good. And, I was successful. But then I was like, I mean, some of the stuff that happened today, you would report to HR. There would be a harassment suit. And I'm not just saying for a small thing, I'm talking big stuff, right? And that really opened my eyes. My reaction at the time initially was emotion. If it happened today, I would behave in a different manner. But at the time, it was upsetting.
You were angry.
I was angry, and I was like, at some stage, I was a little scared, I have to say, with some of the behaviors that people coming to I mean, I'm not going to go into the detail, but it was really kind of a moment where I was going home and saying, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can come back in tomorrow morning. What's going to happen tomorrow? And some of the stuff I was scolded, and I mean, to me, it was like a huge shock. I had never expected this. And after the emotion, I thought, you know what, this is just, I didn't see a way for it to improve unless I stayed for a lot of things would have had to happen to improve within a reasonable amount of time. And I said, life is too short for this. So I left the company, and that was a smart move I did. And in the company I went to, it was in Central Europe then. And the owner was a woman, right? But the thing that was very interesting is that when they run a CEO race, you could call it race or whatever, like they were a CEO selection, let's say. And I was pregnant, and she's the one who told me, oh, you probably don't want to run for it because you're expecting. So again, and she didn't mean badly, but this bias where, for a period of time, it coincided actually with me becoming a mom. That was kind of, if I kind of look at that timeline and this kind of maybe association of ideas that people had. Oh, she's a mother, she's not going to work as hard, or, oh, she's pregnant, how can she become CEO? So there was these things happening. And then when I was CEO in the previous company, I think that was, I didn't ask for it. It was on merit. I think that but the thing though, is that there was a preparation ground. So when I came into this company, same pattern where the company was at a certain level, not making money. And they said, we need you to come in, fix, and grow and get to the next level. And then straight away from the beginning, we kind of run. So the CEO at the time, him and we kind of run the company. So I took care of everything around strategy and business and marketing, commercial, and he took care more of the financial stuff, So we work very well together. And then what happened is that we flipped. So I became CEO and he stayed as CFO. And that's what he wanted. I remember him saying, you know what, it's time to give the baton. We've been working together, and for him, it's like, you're the better person to
and unfortunately, then that was very soon after
and then soon after that, the company got sold. And there again, I was very surprised that it was bought by a Nordic country. And I always had this idea of very egalitarian society.
Right, exactly.
And it wasn't, I mean, board meetings was me and 15 guys. And I thought this is 2019. It's so I don't want to complain, because I do think we've made tremendous progress, right? Because if you look at 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, so
I don't know, Veronique, though you drew my attention to something at some point early on when you were joining, or you joined, or I can't remember at what point, but you said that, I can't remember but the number, because we're one of the 50 biggest companies in the space, and I think you were like one of only, maybe there would be one other one that was actually appointed as CEO in that top 50. And so, I'm sorry, and this is a shout out, I don't know how many people will watch from our industry, but like, we are maybe great on one level, and this is not patting myself on the back, honestly, at all, but like, why don't we have more female CEOs? I mean, that's, since we have a huge percentage of women in the industry, I think it's kind of appalling that there's such a small number of, and I had never thought about it until you pointed it out to me. And I was just like,
and you know what? And this is what's great, because that permeates in the culture of Argos. In Argos, what I've seen is it doesn't matter if you're blue, you're white, you're, whatever, it's what you contribute to the business.
We have
Are
many
you
blue
the best
people.
talent? A couple. But you know what I mean, is that it's all about, what's your talent? What's the best talent? And I think that's super healthy, because I don't think, in my previous company, I remember a survey was done, and there were comments from women that really surprised me, that actually were saying we're not represented. So it was an issue.
Yeah, I don't like the idea. I have to be honest. I don't like the idea of quotas and representation. That really bugs me. It's just anti, and I know that this is maybe something that needs to be to do things, as you said, more in an egalitarian way. But because, like, why not just have the best possible people? I just don't see, but maybe the problem is it's not objective. I mean,
I see the quotas as a kind of a quick fix for a period of time to correct an imbalance. If there's a blatant imbalance, but I do not think that is the solution to, a long-term problem. I do think it can be used as a kind of a spot solution, get things to evolve, and then it should really kind of start taking from there.
I know, it's just people's mindset. I mean, I guess my problem is I can't get into other, it's really a mindset change, and
absolutely,
so what are you going to do if everybody has a certain mindset?
Time, right? 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, it's about how do we shift the perspective, and to me, it's about awareness, without whining about it or complaining, it's not about emotion anymore, right? It's about what do you do about it? And then, how can you help others?
Right.
By leading by example, by supporting, mentoring, there's a number of things that can be done to.
I want to talk about how you handle change, and also draw attention to the importance of recognizing that when a company gets bought or sold, this is a moment of tremendous change. And going back to, I think you were in the Dublin office when it was acquired, and you were very emotional, upset, and your boss said, right, stop crying. What are you going to do about it? But do you think that, whether it's a female thing or your ability to handle change and see change as an opportunity, and a lesson for anyone listening, if you're working for a company that gets bought or sold, I had an incredible story of how to handle acquisitions where the guy giving the workshop was someone who worked in corporate acquisitions, regularly buying companies. And he said, the first thing you have to do over the weekend is decide who's keeping a job and who's not keeping a job. And you have to gracefully, or however you're going to do it, fire the people you're going to fire. But then you get everyone else into the room. And the only question they're going to have in their mind is, do I still have a job? And you can talk about strategy and everything. And they're going to say, stop talking about the strategy. Do I still have a job? And he said, you can tell them 10 times, everyone in the room has kept their job, and they'll still be worrying, is it really true? But so, sometimes the basics are important, but do you think you were good at handling these massive changes and seeing them as opportunities compared to other people? Did that account for your success compared to other people? And was that to do with you being a woman?
I don't think it has anything to do being a woman or a man. I think it has to do about your understanding yourself. and what you want. Because at the end of the day, that's how I handled it. I don't know if it was the right way, but I thought, hold on, that's what I can bring to this business. This is where I see this business headed. Do I believe that I can, one, contribute and be happy in this job, right? That I feel like, because what does it mean to be happy in the job? Is that I do think it's because not just you get your paycheck, but you see you have a contribution, and that people respect that, and they value you, and you value your colleagues, right? So I always looked at, how do I fit in this new environment? It didn't bother me that it was a new environment. Things change all the time. But then it's like, you were talking about strategy. I kind of really looked at that culture and say, will I be able to strive in there as me, right? Others might. And I saw, fairness, a lot of people say they look at their job. They want to keep the job. I never had fear of not finding employment. Sounds really arrogant, but I thought, hell, if I need to work at a fast food, I'll do it. It was more about, I believe that there is always a way. And it might be from this entrepreneurial background and my parents that they always found a way when they had to change the business. My husband is an entrepreneur. He went through many different business models and ideas before it worked. I think that you need to fail probably 10 times before you kind of hit it right. So I always thought there is a way. And I do think it's about you as a human, your identity, and what you want. And my recommendation was always to say to people, what is it you want? And when somebody, and I had, in his M&A, Richard, I had people coming to me upset, kind of, do I have a job? And I was always using this technique. I call it the so what technique. And I said, okay, if you lose, I might lose my job on Monday. So what? Oh, but I won't be able to pay the rent. So, things like that, you just kind of say, is it that bad? Or maybe you can do something about it.
So. And you mentioned in one of the companies, there was an American company, or your boss was American, and there was this can-do attitude. And the translation industry has a lot of women, maybe not as in the CEO role, but throughout the industry. There are a lot of different, obviously, there are a lot of different nationalities in translation, because very often people go into translation because they come from one country and they live in another. There's that sort of, it's a really great industry from that point of view. And so do you think, and you refer to this American attitude, and now you're talking as a European, you're talking about the sort of, maybe it came from your parents, this sort of can-do attitude. Yeah. So do you see could you just reflect on what you think about the American business culture? Because, Kimon is American. The company was founded by American, but grew up in Europe, but our biggest market is America. So can you reflect on that a little bit?
What I've picked up compared to maybe not all countries in Europe, because every country in Europe may have a different way of doing business. But what I found that I always kind of related to in the US is that I always find it was slightly easier to do business, a little bit of a shorter time to making a decision, a little bit more of a willingness to take a risk, to try new things. I've always picked that up. And I always joke that it kind of starts from Silicon Valley, moves across the US, and then comes to Europe. Now, in Europe, you also have hubs of innovation. And I think young people also, their attitude is changing. But definitely this kind of American way of doing business, it's about business, right? I just felt it generally also things like getting referrals. People will say, yeah, you do a good job, I'll give you. So all this kind of business mentality that people feel it's normal to help one another or support one another, but also it's very, I think it's a bit more direct. That's the second thing, right? It's kind of a bit shorter time to decision, but also a bit more direct. You have to understand how people communicate. You might have to read a little bit between the lines, but you know what's going on. I think that sometimes in Europe it's a little bit more difficult to decipher depending on on the countries.
So
France is super hard. France, Kimon. France is, I'm French. It's a nightmare unless you're a French company in France,
right?
Franco-French. It is not easy. I think Germany maybe a little bit to that extent. We work with enterprise, so maybe it's a little bit different, but definitely at SME level, hard.
But say, and in Europe, there's an expression DAC, which is Deutschland, Austria, and Switzerland. And I say that you can be an international company, you may be Japanese, but provided your head of sales for DACH is Wolfgang Schmidt, and you can be.
But you also need to be invoicing from a GmbH.
Well,
Wolfgang needs to be invoicing from the GmbH. The Germans will like to do the business with the Germans. There's a very cultural thing there. I do agree with you, Veronique, about the American, and this isn't because in fact, Argos is not at all. I don't know what Argos is because I never worked in an American company in my life. So I don't know what was created, what kind of a bastard child was created there. But anyway, I wanted to just completely shift gears here and ask you. So you've joined Argos. You've been approaching a year now as the CEO. I know I have the feeling, I think I can confidently say you feel comfortable, you feel at home.
You fit in the company.
Yeah, you fit in. I know, but I mean, the major, as Richard alluded to, really a major equity investment as well. You're a big shareholder of the company. And basically this is your home now for whatever, the foreseeable next period of your career. And I've had this incredibly cool and awesome career that we've just talked about. So I'm just wondering, where are you going to take this? What's your plan? Like, where are you going to take this thing?
This could be like an internal strategy meeting of the business now, broadcast.
No, but I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting. Like, what are you going to do? Like, what? Obviously, let's just be aware that not everybody's a localization person here. So just on a very high level. But where are you going to take this business?
I had the chance of knowing you, Kimon, for a long time, and then I got to meet you, Richard. So when I started in Argos back last May, the first thing I did was actually to share with all of the employees vision and strategy. Not that I pull out of thin air, but from understanding the company, kind of being a little bit of the corridor of the company before joining. And my views, and of course, which I share with Kimon and a couple of other people in the organization, is that I'm a growth leader. I want to grow the company. And we have a plan to get, first mile is first step is to get to 100 million, which is a big, fat, ambitious goal, right? But I really want us to be the most reputable organization for language services for the enterprise business, because it's not just about quantity, it's about quality. I want really the buyers, the customers to recognize us for that, the most reputable. What does it mean? It means like we're the ones that always find a solution and actually adapt, find solutions to their problems and kind of help them going global in an easier manner. And I think, and it's not a big departure from what Argos already had planted as seeds, right? It's really scaling that and taking this to the next level. And I do think that we do have, in my opinion, somehow a differentiator in this personalization or customization of how we deal with customers. And we've done this exercise on a marketing level to figure out this differentiation, because you said it, Richard, it's a very fragmented business. There's a lot of companies. Oh, you're a translation agency. What is it that you do differently? Or what is this extra ingredient in the sauce that gives you, that special flavor?
And you didn't mention the word technology, and there are some animals in this industry, and a lot of you go to conferences and there's industries that might be destroyed by artificial intelligence and machine translation and machine learning, and translations on everyone's heard of Google Translate. Google Translate is a lot better than it used to be, in case you haven't checked in the last 5 years. So
I use it every day.
Yeah, and so do you think that and maybe you should reflect on the scale we are at the moment. Do you see that technology is part of, would we become a pure technology company, or merge with a technology company, or buy one, or how would that technology fit into your goal of, because when you say 100 million, you mean $100 million or euros or pounds or zlotys?
Not zlotys, no.
Not zlotys.
Dollars.
Okay.
Well, the way the dollar is going, maybe we want to go euros, but okay, 100 million. Technology, maybe just a little bit step back on Google. They're the biggest buyer, one of the biggest buyers of translation, right? Themselves. When I worked with them back in 2008 or something, there was already this fear, Google will take over. And, and yes, they have armies of super smart people who created Google Translate. We're talking kind of corporate or enterprise translation. I think we're not there yet, but technology is intricate to everything we do. However, I see that technology is an enabler to what we do. It gives us an edge. It gives us a differentiation. It's not what we sell. Maybe we'll change along the way. But I see that today for our mission or where we're going, really technology is essential, but it's really the enabler, which is dealing with that triangle that never goes away of time, quality, and cost. And this is what the customers really are always looking at. We talk about digital transformation. What is digital transformation? Doing things faster to a better level of quality that costs less. So it's just a different version of the problem that we're trying to solve.
So I'm just conscious of time. I do have we have our classic sort of last ending questions. For me, Veronique, it's the one I like to ask everybody is, so you've had this incredibly successful career, basically. I mean, you came from the I don't want to say I'm not sure, the horticulture or the florist.
From the glass houses,
from the glass house and and, you worked your way all the way up to multiple CEO positions and, being the top salesperson in big companies and like just doing lots of successful things. How much of that story, how much in your opinion, how much of that is dependent on luck? And how much of that is just purely because of your hard work and your skill and your talents, or is there any bit of luck that helped you get to where you are today?
I'd say probably 10% was luck, and 90% was luck created from the hard work.
And what would be the luck? Like, what's an example of the
I can
like,
say one, just listening to your story, which was the people you worked for, some of your bosses, your mentors.
Exactly.
That was random. That you didn't choose that happened. Right?
You answered the question correctly, Richard. Congratulations.
That was luck. I mean, one of the recent luck is to be, to get to know you, Kimon, 10 years ago, and we met and we got on and we cultivated the relationship over the years. We would meet at events, and there was this natural kind of click that we would chat and talk about business and talk about different things. We realized, we get on very well because we had a similar way of looking at things and also different, skills or kind of complementary.
Absolutely.
That was luck. And then, then
that we actually met because after that, as you said, you and I put in our work to make this luck. I mean, it took us 10 years. It took us 10 years to get here. It wasn't.
Yes, but you have this moment where you meet somebody as you say, somebody is your boss and they look out for you. I think that actually is a very big takeaway lesson, is that, and that's what I learned. If my boss doesn't look out for me, I'm not in a good position here. No. I better look somewhere else.
No, and I mean, on luck, I mean, there's an entrepreneur from Cambridge, Alex von Sommer, and he's extremely successful, probably worth billions of pounds, which may not be worth much in the future, but right now that's still worth something. And he had a business called Encipher, and the market were financial services companies in the United States. And when he set up the company, they were too late to get a stand at the main industry event for IT security. And so he just flew to San Francisco and was wandering around the hotel, and he saw a guy with a Fidelity badge, and he thought, he was a young man, I've heard of Fidelity. And he said, do you work for Fidelity? And the guy said, well, of course. And he said, well, I've got this tech that means that you can have hundreds of people on your website at the same time and your system won't slow down. Is that of interest? He said, that's not of interest to me, but I was in a meeting a few days ago, and I know that the server guys are really worried about this. Can you stay here? And the guy said, of course. And he said half an hour later, 6 guys with sort of dark glasses, which were sort of Fidelity security, showed up. And he said, you can say it was lucky that I saw him, but it wasn't luck that I was wandering around the hotel looking for people and, even going to the events, looking out for people. I remember for Argos, I came to fairs and I saw a guy with a Medtronic badge and I followed him into the toilet and followed him out of the toilet.
Oh my God, that's you're probably one of the people that's why they stopped coming to the events.
Yeah.
It's people like you that have scared clients away from the events. Be careful, you're talking to like senior localization world.
I'd say that hard work and being in the right place is obvious things you can control, but it's having your opportunity antenna turned on as well. You know, it's like, and obviously it's about having relationships, talking to people, being able to engage with them just in case there's an opportunity.
And helping. I think that I like to help. There's just like, you know, I like the satisfaction that maybe I helped somebody and something good happened, or, you know, that, you know, it can at any level. And I think that if you have this mindset that you support somebody, you help them, etc., things come back to you.
Okay.
You don't help for something to come back, but you do it naturally. And I think that people go like, oh, but I'd like to work with this person.
So there is that sense of karma. But I wanted to ask you about leadership. And I think one way of thinking about leadership is what is a terrible leader and what is a good leader. And if you think of, and there are different leadership styles, there isn't like the one and what works for one person. If you sort of think of some leaders you've either reported to or observed who are absolutely terrible leaders, what is it about their leadership style that you think is awful? You don't have to name names. I know but just like, what's an example of a bad leader? And when you think of good leaders, and it could be about yourself or someone else, you say, oh, well, that's a good sign that they know how to run things, or they're someone who inspires or motivates.
For me, a bad leader is somebody who is stubborn and refuses to listen to different perspectives and be humble enough to say, well, maybe that's not the right path I chose. And, you know, so that this kind of stubbornness, I think that you close yourself off. And second is somebody who doesn't try to, who doesn't care about all the constituents of the business, right? Because your constituents are your customers, your employees, and your investors, right? And if you just focus on one, and I've seen in my career that leaders who started focusing on all constituents, but then, you know, company got very big and then they focused on one. And then when things got kind of unraveled a little bit. So that this stubbornness and that this, you know, not on the focus, the lack of focus on the right thing. What makes really good leaders, I can flip that and say, listening, listening to opinions, people, then you make up your mind, that's okay. And, you know, you execute whatever, but kind of being open-minded is one. Caring. And I don't know, and I think that is like, it's not whether you're a man or a woman or where you come from. I think caring and be genuine makes a good leader. People can feel that and relate to you. I think that would be like too big. And the third part in a good leader is being a couple of steps ahead, always. You know, because at the end of the day, you got to drive a business, and you got to be always very much, you know, having all your antennas out to see what's going on. And so this curiosity and understanding what's happening helps you being 2 steps ahead.
Curiosity is a very important skill for entrepreneurs. And
so reading, you know, like I heard from your previous podcast, you know, and I think that today we're so lucky. We have all these resources, and I really think that you don't know what you don't know. So every day you should try and learn something, right?
Yeah, don't just stay in your little bubble, but look outside. Yeah. I heard of some CEO who reserves a day a month or a day every week or two just for meeting people who he wouldn't normally meet. You know, it's like he's got like time for different types of contact just to expand. Yeah. And if someone's listening to this, they don't particularly know the translation industry, but they're ambitious. They would like to be you at your stage in life. They'd like to be a shareholder in a big successful company, making progress. Possibly going to be the top female CEO in the world, you know, in the industry, or maybe you are already. I'm not quite sure.
We're working on it.
One step at a time. We're working on it, right? Give us a little time. Give us a little time, right, Kimon?
No pressure, no pressure. But if someone was listening and someone said, well, you know, is there any particular lesson you'd say that someone could learn from your life experience, like someone? It could be a different industry or this industry. Well, if you do that, it'll improve your chances of being happy and successful.
I would say for me, lesson 1 is be bold. Don't be afraid. Right? That's number 1. The second is ask. That's a mistake I made, not asking. Ask. The worst thing that will happen that people will say no to you. Then when they say no, always ask why. don't right? I would say that, ask for that seat at the table. And the third thing is believe in yourself. You know, whatever way, just build that confidence in yourself. Because I think that is the first step to anything, really. And I've seen many people, you know, afraid. You know, so it's tying to the be bold, but the third one was, it would be
So
Believe in yourself.
Be bold. Ask questions.
Ask for a seat. Yeah, ask for a seat, right?
Ask for a seat.
I just in observing and watching Veronique, as she joined and took over the job, and then I reflected on myself as well. I think something we have in common, and I think something that is not something that you can teach, is that you need to like people. I think we like people. Like we're genuinely like other people. We're not, and I know that it sounds like such a, but if you care, if you genuinely care and you're just genuinely interested in other humans, you're going to be a much better, so what is that? Being empathetic, being compassionate. I'm not sure what the right words are to describe that. And it sounds so stupid, right? I mean, it sounds like nothing almost, right? But that fundamental core sort of part of you will naturally make you, and obviously that's not the only thing you need to be a good CEO, but I've just noticed that piece is important, actually.
Yeah, so liking people for sure. And obviously listening is important. If you're going to get on with people, you have to listen to them. The only thing I'd add is also some fundamental level of self-awareness. You said believe in yourself, but you could believe in yourself, and some people, it's not right for them to. Last time I was a CEO, I was on medication. I was so stressed. There were a lot of things in the company, but it was for sleeping. But I was really, it wasn't the right thing for me.
Come on, Richard, come clean. What else were you taking? Give us a bit of Xanax there. Come on, let's throw it in there. Come on, we know that it's true. Come on.
I've had Xanax on a prescription. We're going to go on this journey. This podcast is going to take a very, very interesting track, Mr. Fontequitas. But no, what I was going to say was like this self-knowledge that, success is defined in terms of an objective. And if you know yourself and you know what you want, it's not for everyone. There's stress, there's tough decisions, there are difficulties, long hours sometimes, and I would say that you define success. People should do what is successful for them, and that's and the self-knowledge is fundamental to that. It's not about impressing other people; it's about being happy with yourself.
Exactly, absolutely. And I would say maybe a kind of a last thing would be surround yourself with people who care about you and will help you. So it might be you're in a job and you want to get to the next level, and find a mentor or a coach, somebody, you may have areas that, and I find that for me, maybe 15 years ago, I had my first coach, and it kind of unlocked a couple of things. I think that also kind of surrounding you with yourself. They don't need to be in the same company, the same industry. They can become from a different walk of life. I think that's also kind of very healthy kind of relationship to have.
Yeah, you didn't refer in the pre-conversation to I interviewed my father just 2 years ago. He's dead now, but I'm very happy to have it. And I asked him this question, and he said, he was teaching philosophy at a famous university, and he said, find something you enjoy doing and that you're good at, and do that. And that's an interesting, just find something you enjoy doing and you're good at, and do that. And sometimes it's very simple, right? The different people have different definitions, but there isn't one right answer, but you have to find the answer that works for you.
Exactly.
So, Veronique, I'd like to thank you, not just for sparing the time to come onto the podcast, but thank you for becoming part of the Argos story, for investing in the business and for leading it, because I've been in the picture, but on the side of the picture for a long time, and Kimon did an incredible job up until the time you took over, and everything I hear suggests that you're going to carry on. It's going to carry on going onwards and upwards.
I found my family here, with Argos, and it really feels like this. And I think that the family will expand and grow and travel many places. So it's an exciting. I think it's this journey. It's this feeling of being on a journey. And as you say, being part of it and owning part of the company is also something I'm very proud of. And I'm looking forward. It's only the beginning of the road, isn't it?
Right. So that's right. And just everything he hears about you comes from me. So that just gives you a sense of this. that gives you a sense of what I think. But I mean, I don't want to turn this into a huge we're patting each other at love fest. But no, I am I am so happy to have you and as a business partner, basically, because that's what you are. And you're running the company as well. But we're I'm just believe me, the whole package, and everything that you presented here today, in terms of your experience. I mean, it just shows, and it's been relatively brief, but it just shows so clearly that And honestly, from my perspective, like people ask me, why did you do it? Like, because
Right.
I'm not that old even yet, and
Oh, you're quite old.
I know. Okay, well, just shut up. And the truth, and I tell them, it's like, I'm an entrepreneur, but like, you got to hire the pro, and you're a pro. You are a pro, really a pro. And I'm sorry.
This wasn't going to turn into a love fest.
No, but it is. Well, anyway, whatever. So no, but I mean, I think it's important to. I think it's no, but I'm just, again, for people like there is another we talk about self-awareness and stuff like that, and sort of also there is a moment for the founder, and there is a moment for the founder CEO to that his and I'm not saying I would do a terrible job going forward, but like,
Of course not. Yeah.
you're just better. Like, why wouldn't you have the better person do it? And so, I mean, I think that's
Veronique said, surround yourself with people who care about you. A very good rule in life is to try to make sure you're not the smartest person in the room. It's very easy for me, but like finding people who are talented, who are more.
That was a joke.
Exactly.
No, you both nodded.
It's a big one. Hire people who are smarter than you. Hire talent. Last little comment, when I was first appointed CEO in Explanation, the first trip I took was to Dublin. I met with a fellow CEO from the industry, a guy Kimon, Tony O'Dowd.
Yeah.
We spent the afternoon drinking coffee and talking business. And I said, if there's one takeaway from you being CEO to me starting off, and he said, talent. Your number one job is to find the right talent to surround you. And it struck with me, because I looked back and I said, that's what I've done de facto. But for him to just say that, I was like, yeah.
And by the way, Tony, this thing is going to come out in like 6 weeks. I got to get to Tony's on my list of people to invite. Tony's a good person to invite on the podcast. Actually, I have him on my list, so I'm trying to get him the invitation on before he sees this. So.
So thank you, Kimon. Thank you, Veronique. Thank you, listeners, for spending this time with us. We love your feedback, even suggestions of future people to interview, and we'll look forward to having you back on the next episode. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Pleasure. Take care.